with my greatest.
Public meeting is scheduled for 6 o'clock. I just wanted to give people a couple of more minutes to sign on. I'd like to begin by saying good evening to everyone. My name is Gloria Saeed. I am the Community Development Director for the City of Columbia. Thank you for joining us this evening for our COVID CARES Act Substantial Amendment public hearing. Before we get started, I want to recognize additional community development team members on the call, as well as our consultant team members who are with Civitas Consulting. First of all, I'd like to recognize Dolly Bristow, our CD administrator, Andalyn Rodriguez, our program compliance specialist. We also have Beth Lemons, who's our VR program compliance specialist, and Afton Kimberling, our QA/QC analyst. With Civitas, we have Eric Chatham, who's the principal, and Spencer Christian, the director of operations. I also want to take an opportunity to thank our city clerk, Ms. Erica Hammond, and Justin Stevens with our HR department, our PR department, who are working in the background to help make this virtual hearing possible. Now let's go over protocols on how you can make comments or ask questions after the presentation. To participate via telephone, you may dial 855-925-2801 and enter code 9996. That phone number again is 855-925-2801 and enter code 9996. You will be able to listen to the full meeting. At any time during the meeting, you can hit star and do any of the following. Star 1 means you will allow you to listen. Star 2 will allow you to record a voice message that will be read by staff into the record. Star 3 will allow a participant to be placed in queue to speak on live feed when prompted and unmuted by staff. We ask that you please state your name clearly prior to beginning speaking. After the presentation, we will accept comments and answer questions submitted through the live speaking queue and voice messages. If you would like to submit additional remarks, please email them to communitydevelopment@columbiasc.gov. That's communitydevelopment@columbiasc.gov, or mail to Community Development, 1401 Main Street, 4th floor, Columbia, South Carolina, 29201. All comments must be received on or before 11:59 p.m. on August 18th, 2020. And we will have that information posted again at the end of the presentation. But at this time, I would like to turn over this portion of the public hearing to Eric Chatham. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Ms. Saeed. This evening, we're going to provide a brief presentation summarizing the funding allocations the city will be receiving via the CARES Act, primarily for the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS and HIV program, both allocated through the Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Overall, the CARES Act provides over $5 billion in Community Development Block Grant Program funding to grantees across the country. The Cdbg fund, per the CARES Act regulations, utilize the annual entitlement fund formula to allocate additional funding through this program. And so you see here in red, the City of Columbia will receive $611,921,000 in additional Cdbg funding from the CARES Act. Momentarily, we'll go over the specific uses of allowable for the CARES Act CDBG funds. Additionally, through the CARES Act, likewise using the annual entitlement fund allocation formula, the City of Columbia will receive $220,838 in additional funding for the Hopwa, or Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS and HIV. Primarily, the use of the funds must address the coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic by preventing further spread, preparing for further spread or additional waves, if you will, of COVID-19, or in the primarily expected to be the primary use of these funds, responding to the impacts already felt by residents of Columbia from COVID-19. So again, the funds, both CDBG and Hopwa, must have a connection to either preventing, preparing for, or responding to the impacts of COVID-19. A few specific provisions related to CDBG and Hopwa allocation, again, from the CARES Act. Of note, HUD just published the Federal Register notice on August 7th and was released publicly earlier this week. So we are still digesting some of the particulars in that Federal Register notice. That being said, that we do not anticipate any dramatic changes to the funding recommendations we will share momentarily. We may provide some additional guidance to some of our program partners on how they can deliver these programs, what reporting might be required. But again, we do not expect any dramatic changes based on what we'll find out in the Federal Register notice. What we do know is that the CARES Act extends the deadline for submission of this 2020 Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan Amendment all the way to August 16th of 2021. That being said, obviously the city is underway with preparing that amendment, and we will look to submit this plan well in advance of that August 16th, 2021 deadline. Momentarily, I'll share with you a more detailed timeline in anticipation for these programs. The CARES Act also suspends the 15% cap on the CDBG program for funding to be allocated to public services. This is retroactive for the allocation of funding received in program year 2019, as well as the entitlement, the regular funds, if you will, that was already received for 2020, as well as this additional $611,000 from the CARES Act. CARES Act and HUD also have waived a standard 30-day public comment period and reduced that requirement to expedite access to these funds to only a 5-day public comment. It suspends the requirement to have in-person public hearings. And as you're participating this evening, you understand that the city has taken advantage of that opportunity and is now conducting all public hearings virtually via Zoom and other platforms. The CDBG CV funds are included in determining compliance with requirements for 24 CFR 570-902. And what that just means is that's the federal requirements for the annual CDBG funds. And so on top of funds being used to prepare for, prevent, or respond to COVID-19, these funds must also comply with standard CDBG guidelines and regulations. The CARES Act does provide HUD additional waiver authority to remove or expedite program requirements. However, it does not remove fair housing requirements, non-discrimination, labor standards like Davis-Bacon in Section 3, nor does it exclude or exempt these funds from environmental review requirements. Based on public feedback garnered over the last couple months, as well as stakeholder and community staff and community leaders, we have identified the funding for CDBG and Hopwa to primarily go towards these goals that you see highlighted in red, and I will read in for the record for those of you listening. But these priorities and goals were established in the 2020 the 2020 Consolidated Plan, and these were previously shared with the community in developing the original version of that Consolidated Plan. So this amendment does not add or delete any of those or modify any of those priorities and goals. However, these funds will be specifically targeting the following goals. The CDBG funds will be used to provide vital services for low to moderate income households. The Hopwa funds specifically will be used to provide housing opportunities, including rental assistance, mortgage, and rent utilities, as well as providing medical and supportive services for persons with HIV and AIDS. In addition to the public services for the CDBG CARES Act funding, the city will also be allocating a portion of those funds to provide financial assistance to new and expanding businesses to maintain safe operations in response to COVID-19. Specific allocations will be shared momentarily. So in a little more detail here about the vital services for low to moderate income households, the city will help provide financial assistance to low to moderate income households negatively affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. This financial assistance will include rental and mortgage payments assistance for up to 3 consecutive months. We do know that the Federal Register allows for extension of up to 6 months, and that is under consideration by the city. Financial assistance may also be used for utility assistance and to expand and improve broadband access to Wi-Fi for low to moderate income households. CDBG CARES Act funding will also, as mentioned, be providing support to new and expanding businesses. The city will provide additional financial support to small businesses to help create and or retain jobs for low to moderate income persons within the city. On your screen now, for those of you able to view, are the proposed projects and activities, and including the budget. And I'll summarize those for you that are listening. The CDBG COVID funding will utilize $122,384 for administration. This is to provide for staffing and oversight at the city for these programs. Public services, mentioned previously, will be funded for $326,358. The Economic Development or Small Business Assistance Program will be funded for $163,179. Again, the total funding, $611,921 in CDBG COVID or CARES Act funding. Details about the CARES Act funding for the Hopwa program. Again, the city will provide additional financial support for permanent housing placement, assistance for persons with HIV and AIDS. And the city will provide additional financial support for medical and supportive services for persons with HIV and AIDS. All of this may include short-term rental assistance, mortgage, and utilities, as well as street outreach activities to help identify and locate and promote these programs to persons with HIV and AIDS, as well as homeless prevention, which often comes in the form of preventing eviction for these individuals by providing back rent and rental assistance to avoid eviction. So on the screen now is a proposed budget for the Hopwa allocation. The city will take 3% for administration, which is just $6,625. The city will allocate $83,021 to the Columbia Housing Authority. The Housing Authority will then utilize those funds for rental assistance program and rental assistance program oversight by their Housing Authority staff. They'll provide rental assistance for homeless individuals, as well as shelter operations. The city will provide $2,945 to the Midlands Housing Alliance, the Transitions, $45,325 to Palmetto AIDS Life Support, $24,300 to the Cooperative Ministries, $3,500 to the Upper Savannah Care Consortium, and finally $55,122 to the University of South Carolina Department of Medicine, which often provides those medical support services to persons with HIV and AIDS. I'd like to point out that all of these program participants also receive annual funding through the entitlement program of Hopwa. So these are providing additional services for existing service providers in the Hopwa community. As I mentioned briefly, we previously ran an online survey for both stakeholders and community members. The survey ran from June 1st to June 5th, 2020. We had over 400 responses. On your screen now is a quick summary of that, and I'll highlight a few points here. 57% of all respondents were residents, 11% were business owners, 10% employees, and 18% were nonprofit service providers or stakeholders. We had a good representation from various family sizes. 37% of respondents were from two-person households, 20% from one-person households, and 13% from three-person households, 18% from four, and 12% from five-person households. So again, we got a nice representation from various household sizes. Respondents that chose to identify their race and ethnicity, 49% were white or Caucasian, 41% Black or African American, and 4% Hispanic and Latino. So again, a good ratio here that reasonably reflects the population of Columbia. So that's nice to see that we got a variety of respondents. Likewise, good representation from a variety of household income ranges, 20% for households made between $30,000 and $49,999, 19% between $50,000 and $75,000, 13% from $75,000 to just under $100,000. So again, a nice representation of household incomes for the community. Here's some details on our substantial amendment timeline. We are starting this evening with our virtual public hearing, which also starts our 5-day public comment period. Given the upcoming weekend, the timeline or comment period will run through August 18th. At that time, on August 18th, we will also be making the same presentation that you're receiving this evening to City Council, again via virtual City Council meeting. Presuming that City Council endorses and approves this plan in our submission, we will wrap up the public comments and prepare and submit the substantial amendment to HUD for their approval no later than August 21st. By regulation in the CARES Act, HUD has 45 days to review. So we assume that we will have approval for this plan from HUD by September 6th of 2020. The city will then sign grant agreements and have access to these funds shortly thereafter. At this time, we'll turn it back over to Gloria to answer questions. Those of you able to view this the screen now, you can see links to where you can view this consolidated plan substantial amendment on the city's website, columbiase.gov. You may also mail in or email in comments or feedback for this substantial amendment. And a reminder that comments must be received no later than 11:59 p.m. on August 18th, which will end our public comment period. And again, at this time, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Saeed to answer any questions we might have.
Eric, Thank you for that presentation. And so now we will open it up to any questions that the public might have for us based on the presentation given. We're happy to take those questions or comments at this time.
Okay, Ms. Saheed, there are currently 5 callers on the line, but no one has entered the speaker queue. We would like to remind callers that they can do so by pressing *2.
Thank you, Erica.
You're welcome. Okay, we do have a caller who would like to speak. Their name is not on the screen, but the phone number ends in 5103. As I prepare to add the caller to the meeting, we would ask that the caller state their full name for the record.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Joseph Huggins, and I am the Executive Director of Homeworks of America, headquartered in Columbia. And my question for the group was, will there be opportunity for home repair dollars for very low and low income homeowners as it relates to COVID and the prevention of COVID and the spread underneath the public services portion in the activities?
Ms. Dolly, can I defer that question to you, please?
Certainly. Under the public services area at this time, housing was not a part of the information that was garnered from the survey as far as housing repair for that particular area. But again, we're always looking at comments from the community. We're looking at needs from the community. So at this time, it is not considered, it is not a part of the public service activities.
Ms. Saeed, if I may add to that, in all funding requests and decisions, we must also make a connection for these funds back to, again, preparing for, preventing, or responding to the impacts of COVID-19. So as it relates to housing repair programs, there may be some eligible activities, but overall, that may be difficult to fund with these programs unless that connection could be made.
Thank you for pointing that out, Eric. Okay. Well, we do want to hear from the public, so hopefully we'll get maybe a couple more questions or comments.
Okay. At this time, no other callers have joined the speaker queue. If they would like to do so, please. Okay, we have a caller now.
Great.
Again, as I prepare to unmute you, please state your name for the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Rodriguez-Hodges, and I am with Latino Communications. And my question is very specific to the Latino Hispanic community. So we have just wrapped 10,000 PPE distribution around our state. Would this help us continue the funds, that is, would this help us continue our work distributing PPE and food boxes to the Hispanic and Latino communities?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Ms. Tanya Rodriguez Hodges. To answer your question, that would be an eligible activity under public services, as it would be tied to the prevention, preventing the spread of COVID. So that would be an eligible activity.
Okay, we have another caller on the line whose number ends with 9190. As I prepare to unmute your line, please state your name for the record. Okay, we have another caller on the line whose number ends with 9190. As I prepare to unmute your line, please state your name for the record.
Robin Spaniel.
Go ahead, Ms. Spaniel.
Okay. I am with a nonprofit called Water Well Trust, and we help low-income rural homeowners with water wells so they have clean, safe water in their home. And I have had a few phone calls because people need their wells repaired and there is not funding available for it. Is this something that could possibly be added to have clean, safe water into their homes during the COVID?
Yes, ma'am. So with the individuals that are seeking this service, Ms. Daniel, do you know if they reside within the city limits of Columbia? And the only reason I'm asking that is because you mentioned wells, which I know there still may be some out there, but.
Well, a couple were in Richland County, but no, not within the city limits.
Okay.
So would I have to contact Richland County then?
Yes, ma'am, because our funding is restricted to the city limits, incorporated
Just for the
city limits. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yes, this is Allison Cobb, and I'm calling representing Palmetto Age Life Support Services. And I could not hear, but I understand that our agency is included in this new allocation and round of funding. And I was wondering if I could get the dollar amount that's included in the recommendation and also how these funds are to be used once they're allocated.
State your full name again, please.
I'm sorry?
Would you state your full name again, please?
Yes, this is Alton Cobb.
Alton, that's okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Cobb. All right. Dolly, I defer that question to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Cobb. The amount,
yes, ma'am.
The amount that PALS is being awarded is $45,325. And that is based on a formula based on what you received in your regular 2020 allocation.
Okay.
And again, those funds can be used, of course, to prevent or to do those things that you currently do, but are tied to COVID. So to prevent or to to prevent or to move the program forward. So those services that you provide, you would have to tie that to the COVID care regulations. So.
Okay, so there has to be some event tied to COVID that would precipitate us using these funds.
Yes, so the services that you already provide, you do community outreach, you have a food bank, you provide these services on your normal program. So with the COVID, it would be an extension of these. There may be an increase, okay, in the amount of services that you need to provide due to COVID. So in looking at the services that you provide, the impact that COVID has had on your budget and on the services you provide, those are the things that you really need to look at and how you can utilize those funds to meet the needs of your community.
Okay, so we have to submit a budget amendment in order to incorporate these funds and how we're going to use them in terms of COVID activities, correct?
That would be correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the other thing I heard was that the contract or the approval from HUD is expected by September the 6th. What about the current approval of contracts for grantees? Has that been accomplished yet?
Those subrecipient or sponsor agreements are under review, and they will be coming to you shortly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent.
Ms. Saheed, we have one additional caller whose extension ends with 3309. I would like to add that caller to the line now, and it appears that this would be the last caller, but I will give you an update once you're done communicating with this individual.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Erica.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Pat Beekman with Richland County Emergency Services. The previous caller that wanted to know or was eligible for the Richland County outside the city of Columbia for CARES Act, they can contact me at 980-417-3309, 980-417-3309. We're managing the CARES Act for Richland County.
And that's Pat Beekman?
Pat Beekman, yes.
Okay.
Beekma.
Thank you very much for giving us that information. We'll make sure that gets relayed, and hopefully maybe Miss Daniel is still on the line and she heard that, but if not, we'll make sure that information gets to her. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
At this time, there are no other callers on the line that are in the speaker queue. Everyone is still connected and listening, but no one is in the speaker queue waiting to be heard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So again, we do recognize that oftentimes you may not have any questions, you know, at the moment that we're holding the public hearing, but please keep in mind that you can still submit comments over the next 5 days. If you would like to submit a comment via email, you may send that to communitydevelopment@columbiasc.gov. we would like to hear your comments. We will respond to you with answers. And it really means a lot to us to hear back from the community in terms of what's being proposed. We appreciate you joining us this evening, and you stay safe and stay healthy. And we will go ahead and end now if there are no other calls.